morning, everyone. I am on the move. I'm heading out of town. This morning, we are heading to Windsor. Ladies and gents, 1,000 years of history, the home of Her Majesty the Queen. Beautiful, quaint little town, about 23 miles west of London. So stay tuned. I'm going to bring you every step of the way. Hope you're all well. Delighted to be back up and running. Stay tuned. This is going to be a great one. This is Windsor. I took the train from Paddington Station for the roughly 45-minute journey to Windsor and Eton Central Station, which is the closest station to Windsor Castle. You will have to change trains at Slough Station, but this requires simply walking across a platform. Alternatively, you can take a different train from Waterloo Station in London. That brings you to the Windsor and Eton Riverside Station, and this can add 15 to 20 minutes to your journey. Which route you take will really depend on which London departure station is closest to you. And we're going to have a little look around Windsor Town first before we head in to the stunning Windsor Castle. 1,000 years of history and 39 monarchs have resided here. The oldest occupied and continuously inhabited castle of any castle in the world, and the residence of choice of Her Majesty the Queen. Now look at this replica of a steam locomotive, and this is to represent what Queen Victoria, this would have pulled her royal carriage, of which she was the very first monarch to take a journey. She took horse and carriage to Slough, which is about 4 miles away, and then she boarded her train, which was all decked out, the royal suite, especially furnished for her. Apparently she had a slight paranoia about the compulsory 43 miles an hour speed of the train. She thought it was going to be detrimental to her health, so she insisted the train driver actually only went at a speed of 30 miles an hour. And here's a little bit of information, the architect of which the first train she was on again was Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Now immediately when you come through here, you'll see this stunning building. It's a grade 2 listed building, and I mean, now the station has some amazing bars and restaurants along the way. There's incredible shopping, and I know some people don't think of shopping when they come to Windsor, but there is amazing places to shop. Got a lot of Sweaty Betty, Phase 8, Castle Fineheart, whistles. I'm sure it's not going to be your priority when you first arrive though, but this will give you an idea. So you take, once you find that little steam train, or the replica of, you'll know you're going in the right direction, and we're going to head straight up here towards the town itself and the incredible view that hits you in just a few moments, the stunning residence of Her Majesty the Queen. And look what's in front of you, ladies and gents. The stunning sight that hits you immediately, the walls surrounding the castle. Now, even though these walls were fortified years later, the original structure here was built by William the Conqueror. And we do know that the Queen is in residence, ladies and gents, but look at the sight that hits you. So it's not like you could miss it the minute you come out of the railway concourse. And here is a stunning view of Windsor Castle. Now we're on a big journey today. We have a lot to see along the way. Loads of history coming your way, but I just wanted to show you a little bit around the town itself initially. So this is the main concourse to get you back. Isn't that beautiful? It's a grade 2 listed building, Windsor Royal Shopping and Windsor Royal Station. So in order to get to the castle then, you just make that short walk up there. Once you get to the steam locomotive, you'll know you're on the right track. Straight up here towards the Queen Victoria statue. Victoria was known as the widow of Windsor. She spent the majority of her time in mourning here at Windsor Castle. It's where Prince Albert died as well, here at Windsor. Prince Albert and Queen Victoria both buried in the mausoleum on the grounds of Frogmore, which is also in Windsor, but unfortunately not open to the public. She dedicated a mausoleum there to her resting place, and there she is. So if you're heading towards the castle, you're going to go in that direction, but I'll show you all that in just a moment. You'll see visitors entrance written there, and automatically you are struck with how impressive this stunning residence of over 40 monarchs, including Her Majesty the Queen, and over 1,000 years of history. One of the most impressive and famous castles in the world. Let me just take you down here for a quick look around. Now, of course, in Windsor you have amazing views of the castle, but this is also a great place, as mentioned, to get a bite to eat, have a little bit of shopping. This is Peascod Street. Peascod, very British name of a street. And let's head around here. So some of the more famous buildings here, the one in front of you here is where the museum is located, is the Guildhall. And this was built by Sir Christopher Wren prior to St. Paul's Cathedral. And you will be quite familiar with Christopher Wren, as I speak a lot about him on my City of London tour. And you'll have a look here at this amazing little shop. Love this. So this is the Wonky store, or the Crooked Shop of Windsor. There has been a building on this site since 1592. Now, just a quick mention about the Guildhall here, that was built by Sir Christopher Wren. This was built in 1690. It's where Prince Charles actually got married to the Duchess of Cornwall. It's also where Sir Elton John's civil partnership took place. Now, as we're walking down here, I just wanted to show you another very cool feature. And I always love this and showing my customers this. But the little street we're heading down right now is called Queen Charlotte Street. And you'll see most of these shops are adorned with, look at that beautiful replica of a crown there. Queen Charlotte Street technically has the title of the shortest street in Britain. So continuing down the shortest street in Britain, this street stands at only 51 feet and 10 inches long. And there's a circular blue plaque here confirming that for us. 51 feet, 10 inches in length. And the street itself is said to date back to 1592, and it really does feel like you're back in the 16th century. So let's have a little look around here. We have the Prince Harry pub. Now, I only want to show you a little loop around Windsor and some of these gorgeous little stores along the way. Scotch Stop, whiskies and gins. Here's the Prince Harry pub, and we're coming around the back of the Guildhall. Now, I just wanted to take you down briefly. You know I love churches in the area, and of course we're going to see one of the most famous ones of them all inside the complex of Windsor Castle, and that's St. George's Chapel. Coming up later on the tour. This is the Guildhall again in the museum, and we'll take you just a little further down here. I just want to show you this beautiful church here. This is St. John the Baptist Church. And it arrived here soon after Henry I moved the royal court to Windsor Castle. In 1168, it served several different purposes, but in 1168 it was used as a leper colony. Now it's one of the principal churches in the town of Windsor. Let's have a quick look at it here. It was rebuilt in 1822 in the Revival Gothic style. Now the church is Grade 2 listed, has a lot of the local mayors of Windsor that are buried inside here, and also James Ellison. He was surgeon to the household of Queen Victoria. Now later on I'm going to take you down that path again, and that's going to bring us down to the Long Walk, established by King Charles II, and that's a beautiful 4-kilometre walk south of Windsor Castle, inside Windsor Park, and that brings you down to an amazing copper statue of George III. Let me give you a little look around here. Some lovely places to eat all the way down there as well, down on the main street. And here she is. We have the back of the Widow of Windsor. Right, so we're going to make our way up towards the main castle entrance. There is an airport style security check when you head in, but these are your typical kings and queens gift stores. There's also a cardboard cutout of Mr. Bean. It reminds me, I brought that home in the airport one time as a gift for someone, as a joke at Christmas time. And I did receive some very bizarre looks. You'll see the plane going overhead. We're in the flight path of Heathrow Airport. But just wanted to show you here, this is the Norman Gate on the left-hand side. Now that's where you'd usually exit the palace. But in the background, flying high, on top of the amazing round tower, is the Royal Standard. So the Queen is in residence, ladies and gents. So there's amazing staff here. They're always very helpful, and they'll be very happy to show you around when you arrive here at Windsor. They have a very distinctive uniform that you can see here. A stunning uniform. So there's stewards everywhere to help you out when you arrive. And there's the Henry VIII gate, which is the main exit of Windsor. And the main visitors entrance is up here. Now, look at this gorgeous little courtyard before we head in. Edinburgh Woolen Mill. I like the Carpenter's Arms here for a bit of lunch, usually as well. So you'll never be short of somewhere to go. Now, the street we just went down, I meant to mention it to you actually. You'll see a pub here called Nell Gwyn's. We've also got one, and it's called Drury. It's by Drury House Tea House. But we also have one in Covent Garden on our tour in London. Nell Gwyn was one of the more famous mistresses of King Charles II. And he actually had a home here for her in Windsor. But if you head down that street, Queen Charlotte Street, the Drury House, tea rooms and restaurant, is reference to the fact that she worked in the Royal Drury Lane Theatre in London, the oldest working theatre in London, and presumed to be the most haunted. It's now showing the spectacular Frozen musical. Well, it is said that is where King Charles II first met her when she was acting, working as an actress. She was originally an orange seller. But the street we came down, the shortest street in Britain, is said to have an underground passage as well, which had a secret passage. So King Charles II and Nell Gwyn could meet in private and have a secret liaison. And I did do a video as well of Pall Mall and St. James's Street, and we also spoke about another passage that connected Kensington Palace and her own house, which was on Pall Mall, one of the only privately owned houses on Pall Mall, the home of the gentleman. So, when you head in here, this is the main visitors entrance. As mentioned, the staff are great here, they really do help. But if you come on a group tour, you would usually wait down this street here. And I will be taking you down there later on, because that will make our way down St. Albans Street towards the Long Walk. And your queue would be here for the group entrances. And that's if you come on a group tour. But if you're coming individually, you can head in through the main entrance here. Now, I had pre-booked my ticket and I was pleasantly surprised to know that when I did buy it and pre-book it, I have a year's pass, ladies and gents, because I donated it to the Windsor Castle Fund. So we're going to head inside now. Obviously, I'm not allowed to film through the security check, but we'll get some footage inside. So join me on a tour of the grounds of Windsor Castle. So it's pretty self-explanatory when you first come in here. This is the back of the lower ward, and it's now the residences of the military knights, and they are the military faction of the Knights of the Order of the Garter, which was founded in 1348. That's the Bloody Mary Tower as we're arriving in. Now it's still residences, can you believe that? And one of the Windsor wardens was telling me there 2 minutes ago that it's actually, they have a doctor's surgery in there for the residents of Windsor. So very much a working castle. The view directly in front of you is the Round Tower, and this is where you would head to get your audio visuals and your audio guides. Now, everywhere you go as well, there are Windsor wardens to assist you, and their stunning uniform is based on a riding uniform that George III used to wear, and even to this day you'll see the likes of Prince Charles will wear that uniform. So it's actually survived for centuries. We're just going to let the kiddies pass us here, but this is the view when you first arrive here in Windsor. Now, the history of Windsor is, without a question or doubt, it's complex, and there's over 1,000 years of Windsor history to get through. So what I want to try and do is kind of break it down by the monarchs who have shaped the castle that we see today. So the residence of over 40 monarchs, including Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Again, I want to attempt to break down the key monarchs who have shaped the castle and the fortress, and how it evolved to the stunning palace and the home of Her Majesty the Queen, a beautiful royal residence, and a place of monumental royal occasions that have occurred here over the years. So there's lovely little resting places to take a break, but we're going to start initially. Construction began on the actual castle in 1070, and it was completed in 1086. Now, initially it was built as a Norman fortification and to protect the western approach to London, and to protect the western approach to the River Thames. Its proximity to Windsor Park was also a decisive factor in the building of a royal residence here, because it was a convenient hunting ground, essentially, for the favoured sport, hunting, of kings and queens for centuries. Now, with its proximity to London, it also meant that reinforcements were only a day's march away, in case castles like the Tower of London, another amazing Norman fortification which you will have seen on our channel. For those of you who haven't seen it, we'll put a link in the description. Margaret did an amazing tour inside the Tower of London. So just in case it came under invasion, the reinforcements were only a day's march away. So these Norman fortifications started out as defensive structures featuring a motte and a bailey. And you see that raised earth structure there below the Round Tower. That is what was known as a motte. And the keep was always on top, and it was a wooden keep initially, but it was reinforced by the Georgians. Well, actually, George II reinforced it in stone, and then William IV actually built it 30 feet higher. So the motte and the baileys were two structures, defensive structures, surrounding then the tower. And Windsor's quite unique because they have two baileys. They have the lower ward and the upper ward. So we could really divide Windsor in three parts, the upper, middle and lower ward. And we're going to be approaching the middle ward now. The lower ward is definitely the most public, and the upper ward is where the state apartments are and the semi-state apartments. So you would get your audio guides when you arrive in here, folks, if you're using one. I won't be using one today because, well, I'm hoping to rely on my own information and my own bit of research about this amazing castle. So if you are enjoying the tour so far, go ahead and click that like and share button and help others discover this video. And for more virtual tours of London and beyond, consider subscribing to our channel. Be sure to visit our website to learn more about our in-person tours and London travel tips. We also offer live and virtual tours in cities throughout the world. You can help support this channel by donating through the thanks button or by buying your tour guide a pint or a cup of coffee. Links to do so are in the description below. Now back to the tour. So getting back to the stone structure you see now would originally have been a wooden keep, also known as a donjon, and that came from the Latin word dominion, meaning lordship. Built to intimidate and impress, the donjon imposes on us this idea of a dominating presence, a symbol of power and authority of the new regime. This round tower, there's been a keep on this site since the 12th century in one form or another. So it was replaced by stone, as previously mentioned, by Henry I, and further building of the tower and the entire fortress was converted into a royal residence by his grandson, who was Henry III. He replaced the wood with stone, and including the stone walls, actually replacing the entire wooden structure of this fortification. So that's a better view there of what was known as the motte, the raised earth structure. Kind of an example of that in London as well would be in the Tower of London, the White Tower. So in the turn of the 13th century then, Henry III improved on the private residence and he built a chapel, and he made the walls 24 feet thick as a defence against catapult warfare at the time. Henry III's chapel was originally dedicated to St. Edward the Confessor, and that has since been rededicated. Well, it's the Albert Memorial Chapel now, and we will be seeing that later on when I take us on a little tour around the grounds and the lower ward. And that is what we're looking at right now, the more public part of the castle. Here is the lower ward. And I think we'll take a little look around here first. So we'll start here with the lower ward. And then this is the middle ward, and that is now home to the National Archives, or the Royal Archives, ladies and gents. Stunning collection inside there. Now there is access at limited times of the year to the round tower. You can actually climb on top, but the most stunning visual this morning is the Royal Standard is flying, meaning the Queen is in residence. So at the back of the round tower is the upper ward, and we will be seeing that later on. That is where we'll be exiting from the state apartments, and the visual in there. And that is also where the private residence of the Queen is located. Now you have the middle ward shop here, souvenir shop. We've also opened up a little coffee shop and a restaurant here as well. So after Henry III's chapel, it was extended years later to St. George's Chapel and rededicated to St. George, because Edward III was next to renovate the castle, and he spent in excess of £50,000 on a further and more elaborate redevelopment. He began work on here, which is the lower ward, and he established the College of St. George, which is here on the left-hand side. And that was founded in 1348, the same year that Edward III founded the Order of the Garter, the highest post of chivalry in this country. And that's why St. George, who was the patron saint of the Order of the Garter, he dedicated the chapel, which is St. George's Chapel, to the patron saint of the new Order of the Garter. So he was obsessed with myth and legends, and a lot of people actually believe that Edward III was a reincarnation himself of King Arthur, and he did nothing to dispel this rumour, because he was quite obsessed with that period. So effectively he built his own Knights of the Round Table with the establishing of the Knights of the Order of the Garter. And everywhere you go in Windsor, you will see their insignia. So this would be the College of St. George. And right down here are the homes of the Military Knights of Windsor. And these are the military faction of the Knights of the Order of the Garter. And they regularly attend services here in St. George's Chapel behind me, which I'll show you in just a moment. But do you see the insignia there of the Knights? And it says, On y soit qui mal y pense, which in fact means shame on he who thinks ill of him. And this is their residence. Now, what an amazing place to live. Can you only imagine? So obviously I'm coming back to St. George's Chapel in a moment, but the sun is directly in my eyes there, so I just wanted to extend that for you. So the Knights of the Order of the Garter are still very significant in Windsor history to this day. Every June there is a processional route. The Queen will host a luncheon for the Knights inside the castle, and they will make their way for a service here inside this stunning, you're okay, lovely, no problem, St. George's Chapel. Of course we'll be heading in there very shortly. So not only did Edward III establish the Knights of the Order of the Garter, but he also renovated the palace into one of the finest palaces in the country. And it is said he did so with the help of the finest masons and skilled carpenters. And at one time they say that they suggested every mason and carpenter in the country was working on the rebuilding of this palace, which was no mean feat considering a third of the population had recently been killed in the Black Death. So he found it quite difficult to find workers at the time, but again, most of the work was done by Edward III's skilled masons and carpenters. Now we're heading down here. You'll see the familiar sight of one of the Queen's guardsmen, and you'll know this from the Changing of the Guard tour that we featured on our channel. There's a souvenir store in the lower ward as well. So this is where you would exit the castle at the Henry VIII gate. And as we're heading around here, you'll see the soldier. So the marching guard you see here is stationed here in the lower ward outside the guard room. Is a member of the Coldstream Guards, one of the 5 regiments of foot guards of the Household Division. The guards are responsible for the security of Windsor Castle and protection for the royal family. Changing of the guard at Windsor takes place Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays, but be advised that is always subject to change. It's best to consult the Army's Household Division website for the dates of the changing of the guard. Please also be advised when the Queen is in residence, the guard change will take place in the upper ward on the Quadrangle area. When the Queen is not in residence, it takes place here in front of the guard room in the lower ward. Now, during the Civil War, it's interesting to note that this was the only time that the castle was occupied. Cromwell and his Puritan forces took up residence here. They had executed the king in Whitehall on the 30th of January in 1649, and they took up residence. Now, they did plunder and pillage Windsor, and a lot of the priceless artwork was sold off. They attempted to sell off Windsor, indeed Windsor Park. A lot of it had to be retrieved. And the restoration of the monarchy period was when Charles II reclaimed the throne, and he returned from exile, and he had been in mainland Europe. We'll come back to that in a minute. Just wanted to show you this, which I think is a beautiful part. Now, although it looks very, very old, this is the Horseshoe Cloisters. This was renovated or rebuilt. So the Horseshoe Cloisters, as I said, was built in 1480, and it was reconstructed in the 19th century. So not as old as 1480, but we're allowed to head inside here only certain times of the year. So I wanted to take you in here, because now it's a beautiful home to some of the workers, residences of the workers of St. George's Chapel. And they include, look at this, ladies and gents. How amazing this is. Let me just minimize you down there. So this is the home of 45 junior members, 16 vicars, 13 lay clerks, and 13 choristas. But the reason we're here, folks, is, look behind me, the incredible entrance, or the ceremonial entrance. Now, it was only added to the chapel in the Victorian era. She built this set of steps for ceremonial purposes, and you will recognize it from a very famous wedding that took place, the wedding of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. It's also up these steps where the very sombre funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, members of the army, lifted his coffin up into the chapel. Now, there's no main entrance for us here. These are ceremonial steps on behalf of the royal family, but just a quick look around again. Just want to show you how beautiful it is behind me, and the horseshoe cloisters and the accommodations of the staff of St. George's Chapel. So next, let's head into one of the most magnificent parts of the castle, and always is the highlight for me. Let's head into the amazing St. George's Chapel. St. George's Chapel is one of the finest examples of perpendicular architecture in the world. The chapel as you see it today was completed in 1484 by Edward IV and has been the location of many royal family celebrations over the years, including the recent marriage of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. But more importantly, it is also a royal mausoleum, featuring the memorial chapel to Princess Charlotte, the only daughter of King William IV, who died in childbirth, the vault of King George VI, the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret, and the Royal Vault, where Henry VIII and his third wife Jane Seymour are buried alongside King Charles I, and most recently the burial of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. It is also the resting place of King Edward VII and Queen Alexandria, and the red door you see here is one of the few surviving parts of the earliest chapel at Windsor Castle, built by Henry VII. Now it's the Albert Memorial Chapel, designed by George Gilbert Scott in 1862 under the instruction of Queen Victoria and dedicated to her beloved husband, Prince Albert. The Rutland Chantry Chapel you see here was founded in 1481 by Sir Thomas St. Leger and was dedicated to his wife, Anne, Duchess of Exeter, older sister of Richard III, and the tomb you see here, her brother Edward IV. And one of the many treasures of note in the chapel is the high altar of the nave, featuring the 11 metres high stained glass window which dates back to the 16th century. And finally, a view of the exquisite choir stalls, one of which is reserved for the Queen, above which hang the banners of the Knights of the Order of the Garter. So he reinstated Windsor as the principal palace of the monarchy with the aid of his trusted gentleman architect, Hugh May. And we'll see a lot of the Renaissance style interior of the castle when we take a little trip inside the state apartments. It's largely representative of the decorations or the renovations that were done by George IV, King George IV, the son of George III. Now, the Regency period was known for its lavish spending, and he was a big spender, George IV. He spent in excess, they say, of up to £300,000 making the interiors some of the most desired rooms in this. The furnishings are, in fact, the majority of the interior, actually. I'm muddling my words. I always get a bit excited before I go in here. But the majority of the interior is a collection of over 50 monarchs' private collections inside here. But he's responsible effectively for the Waterloo Chamber that we'll see later on. He's responsible for the Crimson Drawing Room, the Green Library. He was all reds and velvets and gilt golds. He commissioned artists like Thomas Lawrence to paint stunning pictures of the victors of the Battle of Waterloo. And that is now where they have state banquets inside in Windsor Castle, and the Queen usually hosts about 2 a year. Some of the more famous people that have been guests or honorary guests of state banquets have included Nelson Mandela, Jacques Chirac and Madame Chirac, President Obama and Michelle Obama, President Donald Trump, and usually the honorary guests stay in a suite called Suite 204, which overlooks a stunning long walk, which I'll show you later on. But their suite is incredible. They even had the entire cast of Les Miserables came here to play for the visit of Jacques Chirac and Madame Chirac. They were here for the 100-year anniversary of the signing of the Entente Cordiale, and they actually removed the paintings of the Waterloo Chamber. It seemed a bit ironic that they were celebrating one of the most famous victories over Napoleon, and a room dedicated to it was where they were hosting events for the French, so they removed the paintings not to rub it in their faces, essentially. So before we head in there, just the last few things about Windsor itself. So after George IV, not an awful lot was done. Queen Victoria added those ceremonial staircases at St. George's Chapel, but she spent most of her time in private mourning here, known as the Widow of Windsor. Actually, in 1917, the House of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha is what the royal family were known as. They changed their name to Windsor because they wanted to downplay their Germanic heritage, considering at the time they were at war with Germany. It's also where Edward VIII made his very famous abdication speech. It's where the funeral of Princess Margaret took place. The wedding of Prince Edward and Sophie Rhys-Jones took place here. And several other momentous occasions. We've mentioned earlier on the weddings of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and also the funeral of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. But we're going to head in. This is our main entrance to the state apartments. And at this time of the year, in the winter time, only for 2 or 3 months, the semi-state apartments are also open, but they don't open them up in the summertime. So just be advised about that. The Queen Mary's Doll's House, which is a celebration of all things miniature, a stunning little doll's house. We'll put a little link in the description or a picture of it in the description. It's closed as well at the moment because it's under repair, but I will probably come back and do another little tour just so I can show you the stunning doll's house. I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but for right now, let's head into the state apartments. So before I head into the semi-state apartments, I just wanted to show you this in the background. This is Eton, the very prestigious public school in this country. It's where Prince Harry and Prince William attended school. And it's also where Boris Johnson attended school. Several prime ministers over the years. The actor Tom Hiddleston attended school here, Eddie Redmayne. And it is very much desired amongst the elite to educate your children at Eton. And also, behind these trees is where the River Thames would have been located, here at the back of the state apartments, which we're heading into next today. As we first enter the state apartments, we ascend the grand staircase into the grand vestibule, and the trophies of arms and armour that line the walls are based on an arrangement by William IV in the 1830s. All visitors to the state apartments, whether members of the public or heads of state, ascend this staircase to begin their tour. And our first stop on the tour today, as I was here, there was an exhibition of the Queen's pantomime costumes on display at Windsor Castle. These outfits were made for a teenage Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret for pantomimes they performed in Windsor when they were sheltering here during the bombing campaign of World War II. This room is the Waterloo Chamber, and it was built to commemorate the famous victory at the Battle of Waterloo. This takes us into the grand reception room, and this again was recreated by George IV and gives us a sense of his love of all things French. During the 1992 fire, the plaster ceiling collapsed and was restored and reinstated to its former glory, specifically designed by Wyattville to create this lavish impression of the French Renaissance. Now our next stop is the Green Drawing Room. Originally planned as a library and converted into a drawing room again by Wyattville. The ceiling you see here is probably one of the greatest creations in the castle. One of the more impressive rooms in the castle is St. George's Hall. This 180-foot-long room with its Gothic-style decoration was chosen by Wyattville. The walls in this room are hung with military weapons and suits of armour. Shields and armour over 1,000 Garter knights decorate the walls and the ceiling. This room was one of the casualties of the destructive fire in Windsor in 1992. And the ceiling is studded with coats of armour of all the knights of the Order of the Garter since the foundation of the order in 1348. A new oak hammerbeam roof was constructed, and the shields of the Knights of the Order of the Garter were painstakingly recreated and repositioned on the ceiling. Everywhere around the castle, you will see the insignia of the Order of the Knights of the Garter and the motto, Honi soit qui mal y pense. Now this room, in my opinion, is one of the more beautiful rooms in the entire castle. Known as the Queen's Ballroom, and it was originally constructed for the wife of King Charles II, Queen Catherine of Braganza. It was remodelled by Wyattville, who actually replaced Verrio's ceiling paintings and also removed the oak panelling. The magnificent glass chandeliers you see here were hung in the reign of Queen Victoria. And the portraits that adorn the walls are by the very famous portrait artist Van Dyck, most of which had been stolen and plundered during the Civil War, but were retrieved years later during the restoration of the monarchy by King Charles I's son, King Charles II. And this is the Queen's Audience Chamber, retaining the stunning ceiling artwork by Antonio Verrio and the original carvings again by Grinling Gibbons. Verrio's ceiling depicts Catherine of Braganza in a chariot being drawn by swans to a temple of virtue. The presence chamber was also used as a waiting room for guests who would have had an appointment scheduled with the Queen. Now this room, the rather small chamber, was known as the King's Dressing Room, and it's in here you'll see some of the most stunning artworks on display in the castle. Masterpieces created by Giovanni Bellini and also by Rembrandt and Van Dyck again. Take your time to have a look around at some of these priceless art pieces of the royal collection. So next we're heading into the King's Bed Chamber. And the elaborate bed you see here is by French woodworker George Jacob, draped with green and purple fabric, similar to the ones used when Emperor Napoleon III came for a state visit in 1855. If you look closely, you will see the intertwined initials of both Napoleon and his Empress Eugenie are embroidered on a fabric panel at the foot of the bed. Now this room was known as the King's Drawing Room, and during the 19th century this was known as the Rubens Room, named after the famous Flemish Baroque painter Peter Paul Rubens. Prince Albert had decorated this room with several Rubens paintings, which are now in the royal collection. The elaborate plastered roof depicts the arms of King George IV and the Garter Star. This is where King Charles II received important visitors, and it is also the room that King George IV was laid in state in 1830. Now let's head out through our last rooms in the castle, and I want to take you around the Upper Ward, which is the private residence of Her Majesty the Queen. Okay folks, so this is the upper quadrant, and this is the residence of the royal family. So where we've actually gone, this long building on my left, behind this tower, it goes the whole way down is St. George's Hall. Then across the end you see there, and that is the semi-state apartments of the royal family. But if you look in the corner, that tower area there, and the round tower, that is the residence of Her Majesty the Queen, the private quarters of the Queen. And through that archway, where you'll see the soldier is moving right now, is the Long Walk. Now we can't access this, we're not allowed any access into this area at the moment. Although you can guide through some of the state apartments, It closes off just from that round tower right here in the corner. These are the residence of the Queen, where I am filming right now. So we can't head down, but I will go through the town and I'll show you the Long Walk. The Long Walk was established by Charles II actually. He established the Long Walk. It's a 4 kilometre walk right in front of the castle. Stunning, stunning tree-lined walk. It used to be lined with elm trees, but now I believe they've replanted them to plane trees. Just wanted to show you the more exclusive and private part of the upper quadrant. So we just have the mini guard relief taking place every 2 hours. These soldiers are in their sentry boxes. Right now where we are is up at the upper ward of Windsor. And let's just follow them over and I'll show you where they're going. Going on duty to relieve. I think this chap was a little worried I was going to follow him in, but I certainly wasn't. I'm fully aware that these guys are the real deal. He's locking the doors and they're relieving the gentleman in his post in his sentry box over here, which you'll see. Now why is he here? Because these are the Queen's private apartments. So most of the Queen's apartments, they extend from the far corner down here all around, but the majority they're on the left hand side behind that white is it a Range Rover? These are the private apartments of the Queen at Windsor, and they extend the whole way around. But these part of the semi-state apartments, or the royal suite, is usually where foreign dignitaries will stay when they're visiting for a state banquet. And if you look closely there in the middle, that archway gives you a view onto the Long Mile, the 4K walk south of Windsor Castle, and that's usually where suite 204 is, where very important dignitaries or guests of the Queen will stay. There's his and hers bathrooms, there's a private living quarters, they have their own butler and a maid. Even their packing is done for them. They will itemize their packing to make sure they pack it correctly and all the goods. They take their housekeeping very seriously here. Windsor has some rather unusual people employed here as well. There's a horologist who is employed to make sure the 450 clocks are exactly on time. They have one chap who lights all the fires. The kitchens here are some of the oldest working kitchens, is the oldest working kitchen in the world. And I've just come out of this side. This is the exit from the state apartments. So then we head through the Norman Gate, this direction, which was one of the oldest gatehouses built to protect this approach to the round tower. And the Royal Standard is flying. It's the moat path. That is Charles II, by the way. And it's said to be a replica, well, meant to be similar to the Charles I that's in Trafalgar Square, the central-most point in London. So let's make our way around here. So King John's Tower entrance, that one is called. And over here you have the billiard room, former billiard room, which is now the souvenir store. And we'll take you through here because this is some of the best views of the round tower coming here on the left. But it's actually incredible to think that right across here, literally just across that quadrangle of the upper ward, the Queen is in. And she is in that room right across the way from me here. Can you feel the majesty in the air, ladies and gents? I certainly can. Right, we're going to head through here. So now we are going to follow the foot soldiers and make our way out of the castle complex and then head south till we connect with the dramatic Long Walk. So one of the more beautiful additions to Windsor Castle was the Long Walk, and it was established by King Charles II in 1680. and he was much inspired by the Palace of Versailles and the renovations that were taking place there at the same time. So it gives stunning views, and it's also the venue of Suite 24, where any visiting premiers or heads of state that have been guests of honour at a state banquet have their room with this stunning view. And I'll show you right behind me right now. This is where the long walk extends to, and it's 4 kilometres long, but it's where all the major royal processional routes take place, like Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, or the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, had their elaborate procession here after their wedding. It has been favoured with residents of Windsor for years. This is the beautiful Windsor Park. It's also where the Queen will leave Windsor Castle in her royal carriage from this direction, and then she'll make her way towards Ascot, the stunning race course in the area. Now we are in the flight pathway of Heathrow, so you will hear some planes, which is quite refreshing to hear now, but it extends for 4 kilometres, 4 miles. And we might attempt that walk the next time I arrive. That is something you have to visit whilst you're here. There's a lot of celebrations planned around here for the Platinum Jubilee as well, and no doubt there will be. They will use the long walk for a processional route of Her Majesty the Queen celebrating 70 years on the throne. So the stunning Windsor Park. So for right now, I'm going to make my way back to the train station, ladies and gents. I want to thank you all so much for all your continued support and your loyal following. You are amazing. Several more amazing tours. I'm going to be visiting places all outside of London, inside of London, possibly going back to Ireland, maybe a few trips to Europe. I'll make videos as long as you want me to make them. Don't forget to check out our playlists, ladies and gents, and don't forget to check out all our public tours which are up and running, particularly in London. All our guides are ready to meet you. Thanks again, ladies and gents. I'm heading for Windsor Rail Station and a short journey back to London. Thanks for watching. Sinead here with free tours by foot at the incredible Windsor.